Good evening and welcome to this platform 15 minutes in WACSI, the space that we give to different stakeholders to share their perspectives on their work in their respective countries, so that we get to understand the key issues that require involvement and collaboration, partnership and a response from the civil society body across the globe. Welcome on board.
Good evening and thank you very much for inviting me on this platform.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
I'll say I am Abu Brimah. I come from Sierra Leone and I work with the Network Movement for Justice and Development. But I'm an all-rounder in civil society work in my country and perhaps beyond Sierra Leone.
Great. Thank you very much, Abu, once again. This particular session will be focusing on the state of civic space in Sierra Leone. Can you just give us an overview of how civic freedoms are being respected or curtailed within your country?
Sierra Leone is a country that, for many years has been growing in terms of its, development of its democratic, opportunities. After the war, 11 years war, I mean it's a long time now since we finished the war, we've been trying to build our democratic credentials. Unfortunately, for the past 10 years or 15 years, what has become a real issue of concern is civic space, which we consider to be shrinking fast. And governments, come and go, they always promise to improve operation, how civil society operates and how they work and collaborate with civil society. But what we see more and more is, attempts to control civil society, attempt to reduce the autonomy and independence of civil society, and attempts to even close the, obligation of civil society to question the legitimacy or even the accountability and transparency of authorities. And so they have made the work of civil society fairly difficult, and we almost think that civic space is closing. So Sierra Leone is really why there may be some positives in terms of building an open society for businesses. Environment is becoming more conducive for businesses, but the actual rights of citizens are actually being constricted.
Wow, that's quite interesting to know, particularly given that we understand the political transitions that moved from the past regime to the current regime, and it was democratic. And for us onlookers, followers on Facebook, particularly of your very, I would say, dynamic president, one would have the belief or understanding that Sierra Leoneans are really enjoying an open society. But from your perspective, that is the contrary. What are some of those specific instances or events that you would use to illustrate how that space has been restricted for civil society organizations or for citizens?
There are many examples, and honestly I will not bore you, but I'll give you some practical examples. One of the things that have really marked the non-respectability of government, of civic space or civil society rule to operate in a free and unhindered way in a society is the legislative procedures. The government has really over the years put in place a very difficult and tortuous way of making NGOs register. The procedures are just too much, and there's a lot of cost involved, which we don't have money for. And at the same time, they are subjecting people to some, conditions to register, which doesn't make sense anyway. And apart from that, they even established a committee in Parliament to hold civil society accountable. It's just a question of making sure that civil society, know that its government is in charge, and government can They claim that whatever monies government gets, civil society gets, is gotten in the name of citizens. So therefore, the Parliament has the responsibility to just check on anybody and check on them and ask for them for account. Civil society is not against accountability, but we believe that Sierra Leone has signed up to international standards, human rights standards, to African, Charter of Human and People's Rights, which gives civil society the autonomy and independence to operate unhindered and to even not to subject them to any undue duress. Apart from that, the government, these past 2 years, they have also developed what they call a development cooperation framework, which actually makes it now completely, against the law to even develop a proposal or to ask for money from, donors without going through government. And the government plan has to be strictly followed. So if your existence and your plan or strategy doesn't follow what government has put in place, it means that you are not in line, you are not, compliant. And yet, we are supposed to be monitoring government, and government doesn't have any framework in their plans to hold government accountable for whatever reasons. So I think they have restricted us so much. Apart from that, government is also, over the period, they have this Draconian Public Order Act 1965, which they have been promising to review and expunge from our books, but it's still there. And for that Public Order Act, there's hardly any open demonstration, because the police don't allow. Even if you ask them, they come, in the end, you discuss, and they don't give you space. They say they are not sure that it will be safe, and so on. And so they have, in fact, they have really denied many people the application to demonstrate. So public demonstration is to a large extent not allowed, and many other civil society activists have also been subjected to actually, government brutality. From just ministers would just say, this is libel, and then civil society activists are taken to CID and they are locked up for a number of days and weeks. At the community level, citizens are not allowed to even advocate for their land right. In some parts of the country where land grabbing is the case, where companies come and government just go and give out people's land, appropriate people's land, and give it to mining companies and big plantation companies. The government deploys military, for that matter, and police to brutalize, communities. In some of those communities, as I am talking to you now, in one of the districts, Pujam district in Samale Chiefdom, where Sokfin, agribusiness is located, communities have refused to come back home because they were beaten and 2 people were killed. And until now, those people have been grabbed, and about 23 of them are now attending court. Government says they are suspects. So there are a lot of systematic violations of the rights of people. Police are high-handed in their operations. They just brutalize citizens, and not much is done. With impunity, for that matter. So the space is really now is not something that we are very proud of, unfortunately.
And as civil society organizations, how are you able to cope? And how are you responding to these infringements?
There are many things we are doing. We probably may not have been doing the things in the way that will make government to sit straight, but I think we are getting very organized. Those communities that have been brutalized and that have been refused access to their lands, we have plans. We have been supporting them, and we are also appealing to the international community to appeal to our government, and we have gotten the government to set a commission of some investigating team to look into that. In fact, when I go back next week, we are going to, on Monday, we are meeting the chairperson of that committee that is investigating that case. But in terms of the development cooperation framework, which we are against, which we want to be revised, in line with best practice and international human rights standard. The minister, the government have said they are not going to listen to anybody until 2021. That's when they will revisit it. That's just the news we got here, because we have a new minister, and we are hoping that the new minister would actually listen and know that, because he's more experienced and more exposed. Unfortunately, he has just closed the space. But we are organizing. We have been having conferences, and civil society have been doing some analysis with the support of ICGN, and we have our alternative, documentation of what we want to see in the development cooperation framework or the NGO policy. But again, government is government, and when they want things done their own way, they listen to nobody but themselves. And so at the moment, it's really a situation that we are not on top. And we are also trying to organize civil society at national level, from district level to national level, so that we have a more broad-based movement that will actually make demands on the government on a number of things, including civic space, including the NGO policy and the development cooperation framework, but also including the brutalization of citizens in their communities for mining companies or agro-business companies. So there are a number of things we're doing, but we're also looking for more partners, both sub-regional and global level, to pipe pressure on our government.
Great. Coming to the element of partners and that, where do you see the place of activists, of social movements in terms of working with them to push back these forces that are clamping down on civic freedoms?
Yeah, I think this is activists and social movements are what we will have to create. We'll have to find a way to create a meeting point with the civil society organizations to see the need to work together on issues like these. Social movements, there are some semblance of social movements around, and we are also creating this broad-based coalition of civil society activists and groups across the country. But we're trying to develop it, and it's not easy, because this is a structured approach to destroy civic space, civic independence. So we are thinking that we need a structured approach to sustain the fight to reclaim the space and to sustain it. And we want to also sustain that structured organization that we are thinking of developing, so that it doesn't become something that today we just fight for civic space, and then we get the government to reverse, but then tomorrow when we need something we get organized. I think we just want to keep the momentum going and look at many things, including the constitutional review, because also if the constitutional review process really takes place, then it will develop, it will demand that some of those drawback clauses would be, expunged from our, constitution.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm sure many of our stakeholders have been enlightened about the situation in Sierra Leone, and I particularly like your appeal to other stakeholders, particularly development partners, to find ways of joining in this struggle to support the movement on the ground, to support the actors on the ground, and make sure that you support the right partners to clamp down or to push back on these forces that are actually trying to shrink the space that civil society organizations like ABU's are working in. Thank you once again, and we wish you all the best.